everyone. My name is Ivy. I am the occultist on YouTube and Instagram, and today I have a special guest. Maevius Lynn is joining us today to discuss Thelema, and I am so excited because I have been dying to interview a Thelemite for a while now. Would you like to say hello and just give us some information about yourself?
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. What a joy it is to be here. So, I'm Maevius Lynn. I'm an artist as well as a practicing occultist, Thelemite, ceremonial magician. I'm also on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, all of these places.
Yes, yeah, we'll definitely be linking your information below for anybody that wants to get in contact with her. So I just wanted to start this conversation out just for those who are completely unfamiliar with what Thelema is. Could you give us just like a brief description of what it actually is to you?
Sure, absolutely. Thelema means it's a word for will. It's a religion, it's a philosophy, as well as a system of mysticism laid out by Aleister Crowley.
Yes, definitely. I'm excited to dive into Aleister Crowley a little bit in this conversation too. And I knew that I've been kind of hearing this term floating around of the holy guardian angel. I know that
Sure.
there's something about finding your holy guardian angel, and I know it's not like strictly to Thelema, but I've heard that it's closely related to that. Can you just kind of elaborate on that a little bit, give better clarity on what that is?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. Um, the main things which make someone a Thelemite, there's a lot of definitions going around out there, and I feel like I need to address what is a Thelemite first before addressing the Holy Guardian Angel question. Um, the definition I like the most personally, although you can define it more restrictive and more broad, but the one I like was laid out by Sabazius, and that is someone who accepts the book of the law, and that can mean whatever it means to you. There's no, but if you accept the book of the law and you are trying to do your will, that is what a Thelemite is. And if you're meeting those criteria, some of these other things Aleister Crowley laid out in his system of mysticism, such as knowledge and conversation with a holy guardian angel and some of these other things, it isn't required for you to do as a Thelemite. And in fact, we do see in our community, even more broadly, people, as they are doing their will and discovering their will and so forth, they are drawn to a lot of different paths and things they're interested in. And so this path to obtain knowledge and conversation isn't necessary. But should someone choose to do that, what that looks like is there's a lot of different ways to try to contact your holy guardian angel, a lot of different options out there. But essentially, someone tries to get in contact, and what the holy guardian angel means in the Thelemic context will again be defined differently depending on the type of Thelemite you talk to. But we're generally talking about this divine spark within yourself. So some people envision this like a literal angel outside of yourself that you're connected to, and you have your spirit or soul has been connected to from birth. Some people envision it as your true internal self of this divinity. And some people also think about it as a part of their mind or consciousness or their true core being. So the idea is to tap into that or get in you're already perhaps is already a part of you, your holy guardian angel, but to tap further into that and establish that connection, learning things, getting that knowledge and conversation steps like learning your holy guardian angel's name. But again, I want to stress that Thelemites are very diverse in how they define that and how they approach that. But yeah, the general concept is there that it is a part of yourself and has been there, but you may not have access to it. And the benefits as a Thelemite of having this knowledge and conversation is to be able to know your true will. And again, that's your divine purpose or your more innermost purpose in life. So your will wouldn't be something like, oh, I want to eat an orange today. It's a bigger picture than that. And your holy guardian angel on this sort of quest can aid you in figuring out your will and ultimately doing your will.
I love that. I love how you just said that there's two different perspectives on that, because I've heard that quite a bit with just angels and demons in general. Are they external entities or are they more like thought forms, just part of your psyche? So I like that you put that in there, that it really is a perspective thing. So thank you for
Yeah,
clarifying that.
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So I know that everybody always wants to talk about Aleister Crowley, and it's no secret that like some people hate him, some people love
Mhm.
him. And so I kind of wanted to hear your own personal opinions, because I know there are some Thelemic practitioners that are even trying to remove him completely from Thelema. So I wanted to know your opinions on Aleister Crowley, if you care to share that, and then also just kind of the culture that surrounds that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a really important conversation. So thank you for asking this question. And I think it's really central to our religion and in what this means to us. And of course, I think this journey begins with who Aleister Crowley is as a Thelemite to my religion. And I see this a lot where people think, so I'll backtrack. The central sacred text that lays out the new Aeon, Thelema, is something called the Book of the Law. That was received by Aleister Crowley. So when we talk about the central sacred text that lays the groundwork for our religion, the Book of the Law isn't just some book Crowley sat down and wrote. Now, Crowley was a very prolific poet and writer in his day, and that, absolutely. But this text was special, as well as some other sacred text he received. But he received this book as the prophet of the new Aeon. And when I say prophet, I don't mean he was a Jesus Christ figure. And I think a lot of us who grew up in a Christian culture are so familiar with prophets being this perfect divine person that we should aspire to be. Crowley was nothing of the sort. He obviously had a lot of issues in his life, and a lot of things he struggled with. Like, he was very much just a human struggling with things. This includes drug addiction. This includes illness. This includes, a lot of the problems he faced during his life with his relationships, a tumultuous family life. And he also espoused some rather problematic views that even today we look at and we say, okay, he had issues with misogyny. You can see echoes of racism, and these were nothing special because, again, he was a privileged Victorian man. And you see that in his commentaries, you see that in his his relationships and so forth. But to go back to the reception of this Book of the Law, Crowley's role in it wasn't to be some perfect being. He acted as a megaphone for divinity in that moment. So despite him being, and perhaps, I can't speak to the true nature of divinity and the purpose therein of choosing Crowley, but he was chosen for whatever reason, and used as a megaphone for these divine forces, for this divinity, for these gods and goddesses, however you want to conceive divinity, that's really up to you. But he was chosen and used. And so when I think about the Book of the Law, for me, Crowley isn't the author. He was simply the megaphone through by which divinity created. And so when I celebrate my gods, my goddesses, the divine forces of my religion, I'm not celebrating Crowley. I'm celebrating the divine.
Yes.
And absolutely. And I think that's a very important distinction. So this is not, I can both celebrate divinity and recognize holiness in these beautiful works and what divinity has shared with us, while also condemning him as a man and saying, wow, he really messed up. Wow, I don't agree with these things. And I think that's very important. So at no point in my path as a Thelemite, and I would say the vast majority of Thelemites you meet, they don't try to be like Crowley as a prophet. They don't view him as a godlike perfect entity and aspire to be him. I think the vast majority of us, and of course always exceptions, right? But the vast majority of us do see him as a troubled man, as a problematic man. And nevertheless, we view the importance of divinity in our lives and the importance of these beautiful divinely dictated texts. So you could have both. You could have a reverence for divinity and have issues with Crowley. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, I love that you said that, because you really do have to separate the message from the man. And yeah, I think that's really important too. It kind of reminds me of Buddhism in a way, and this is like a really weird, not even correlated whatsoever, but being a Buddhist for a long time, the Buddha always said, don't look at me, look at what I'm pointing to, so you want to acknowledge the truth in his words, not necessarily acknowledge him as a specific prophet. So it just kind of reminds me of that a little bit. So I love how you said that. So I wanted to kind of go into your personal practice a little bit, just so we can get like an inside peek of what Thelema looks like, like what
Yeah.
Thelemites do, because I have absolutely no idea. This is a brand new territory for me. So I wanted to first ask you, how did you come to find that this is the right path for you?
Yeah, so it took me a long time to get here. So I've been a practicing occultist for over a decade. I started off with a heavy focus in philosophy, atheistic Satanism, things like that. And I've been aware of Aleister Crowley for a while, but I sort of put him on hold to read other things, and I was like, at the time in my life, and this is of course very personal, something I actually haven't talked about. So for people who are ready to hear more about my personal story, yeah, you came to the right channel. But um, I was feeling very lost in my life, and I was feeling, I had very low self-esteem. I was feeling really disconnected from what I wanted to do with my life. I had switched careers a couple of times. I was just like, oh, what the heck is going on? What is true to me? And I kept asking this question of like, what would make me happy and feel like I had purpose on this earth? And I was like, well, let's go back to this guy, Aleister Crowley, because he talks about true will a lot. Like, what is going on there? And so I was reading more and more. I was like, what if I just started doing this? Like, what if even if I don't fully believe in it or believe in him or this system of mysticism, what if I actually fully started engaging and trying to find my true will, to find my purpose? And if it doesn't work, cool. If it does, awesome. And so I did. So I committed to that for about a year, and I was like, wow, this is real. This works. I felt incredibly closer to myself, and I was like, well, let's keep going. It feels amazing to be closer to myself, my will, the divine. And Thelema isn't the only path out there, of course, but it's certainly given me gifts that I don't think I could have personally found elsewhere. So
I love that. How many, if you don't mind me asking, how many years ago was that? Like, how long have you been practicing?
3 or 4 years. I don't want to quote an exact time, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but before I got really serious about studying Thelema in particular, like I said, I've been an occultist for over a decade, but Thelema wasn't the focus perhaps of my esoteric studies until about 4 years ago.
Got it. Yes, I totally resonate with that. That's about the time that I found chaos magic, and then I became a
Oh,
chaos
cool.
magician. So yeah,
Yeah,
right on the same path for
awesome.
sure. Well, kind of. Okay, so I wanted to also ask you, what is your favorite aspect of being a Thelemite?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's a lot of favorite aspects, of course.
Tell
But I
us
think
all of them. I don't
yeah,
care.
yeah,
Let's
okay.
do
Well,
it.
I think there's like the in-person community, and then there's just sort of my personal spiritual practice, which is very personal and individual for me. But I guess I'll talk about the local Thelemic community I'm a part of, which is a little bit different flavor than some of the online stuff you may see. But I had the privilege and pleasure of having a local Thelemic community, and I feel like it's a space where I can truly be myself and have that fraternity and fully embody, I guess, who I am in an unjudging yet caring environment. So I feel like I'm surrounded by people who are fully engaged to help me do my will. And I don't have to hide a part of myself, and I can just be present in the moment with very loving people. And this goes for my local pagan community as well. But speaking specifically about my Thelemic community, just such good people. Um, and then in my own personal spiritual practice, I think for me, and a lot of people might resonate with this, is undoing a lot of that religious trauma of shame and guilt. And eventually, when I moved into the corporate world of having this extra pressure of just like not knowing myself and my identity, Thelema is such an incredibly powerful tool to ground yourself in who you are and celebrate your divinity and celebrate that divine spark within yourself. And I think a really great example of that sort of pulls it all together is in one of the primary public rituals of the OTO is the Gnostic Mass. And there's a part of it where all the congregants come up and they say, there is no part of me that is not of the gods. And that is really one of the beating heart and souls of Thelema, which is celebrating your own divinity. And it really helps you work past that religious trauma and that shame and that guilt. And yeah, I think that really sort of encapsulates my joy and exuberance for this specific path.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, don't we all have to get over religious trauma? Like,
Yeah,
unfortunately, most of us have religious trauma. So I'm glad that it did that for you. And that, yeah, that's really
yeah.
inspiring to hear. Definitely. So, what does your magical practice look like, let's say on like a daily, monthly, weekly basis? What are some of your rituals, if you don't mind sharing? I don't know how secretive it is or how private it is. So feel free to share whatever you want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, there is some stuff I'm not going to share. But to give you, am at liberty at the moment to share a lot of what I get into. So, on an ideal day, what I do is Liber Resh, and that's a type of solar adoration performed 4 times a day at the 4 stations of the sun.
Wow.
So, yeah, so Liber Resh is a really beautiful ritual. So you face in the 4 corresponding cardinal directions, and you recite sort of this solar adoration that you ideally have memorized, and I do have memorized, and I will make a note there, as with a lot of people will say, if you memorize a ritual, especially some of these daily rituals, you're really incorporating that into your soul, and the words resonate differently than just simply reading off of a piece of paper. So I'm not sure if that's just a ceremonial person thing, but that's been
No, I
definitely
totally agree with you. I feel the exact same
okay.
way. I always have to have it makes you feel like you're more present in the moment when you're not just reading off a
Hmm.
book and you have things memorized. Like if you can memorize it, that's yeah, so much better.
Yeah,
Anyways, continue
definitely,
on.
definitely.
Yeah.
So I do Libra Rush for on ideal circumstances 4 times a day. And I also at my main meal, which I typically eat 2 big meals a day, so it's sort of turned into me saying will twice a day. And everyone's like, oh, saying will for a Thelemite is like saying grace, but it really isn't. So grace is sort of saying thanks. Saying will, the whole purpose of it, similar to Resh in a way, is bringing mindfulness into that meal so that you may accomplish the great work or accomplish your will. So I say it's not really a saying thanks like will as much as it's saying, okay, pause, acknowledge the moment, be present in the moment when you're eating, and acknowledge that you consuming these calories, that which then turns into spiritual substance or magical substance, allows you to do your will and your divine purpose. So those are my dailies is
Interesting.
Libra Resh and will. Weekly I do yoga. A lot of people don't seem to talk much about this, but one of the things Aleister Crowley did, and one of the central components of his system of mysticism is bring over yoga to the West. Like Aleister Crowley was one of the main Jews to introduce yoga to the Western world.
Wow. I
Yeah.
definitely did not know that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's other people too, but that was one of Aleister Crowley's big things was yoga. And so I do yoga. I try to weekly. Another big, and then of course I do this is just a me thing, not really a Thelemite thing, but I do a cleansing on the full moon, monthly, and also a big part of my Thelemic spiritual practice and things I do is I do a monthly Gnostic Mass with my local OTO body. And normally I get to participate in that Gnostic Mass and be one of the ritualists doing it. Sometimes
Yes.
sometimes I'm a congregant, sometimes I'm doing it. This month I'll be actually performing the Gnostic Mass with the other members of the team. So
Wait,
that'll be really cool.
is that your first time doing that?
No, I've
Oh,
done the Gnostic Mass a bunch,
oh, okay.
but
That's
yeah,
so
it's just
exciting.
it's just a real fun thing to do and celebrate. I always feel like the Gnostic Mass is a celebration of life and each other. So so I do the Gnostic Mass monthly, and then of course one thing I've also been enjoying doing is doing initiations and going through initiations with the OTO, which of course I can't talk about like what that means, but essentially, the OTO has their primary public rituals, which would be the Gnostic Mass. So vetted people can come to those. You don't have to be a member and all that. But for the more private rituals, those are going to be your initiations, and going up in degrees and stuff like that. And that's a really beautiful experience as well.
Interesting. Okay, so I just had a question pop into my head. You totally
Yeah.
don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But so what do the holidays and festivals look like? Are they similar to like the pagan festivals? Do they have their own set of holidays? What does that look like for you?
Oh, good. I'm so glad you asked this question because I always want to talk about Thelemic holidays. So actually, in our Book of the Law, it actually lays out similar. People are going to be angry that I say this, but y'all bear with me. Similar to the Wheel of the Year, we actually do have Thelemic holidays laid out throughout the seasons. Now, a lot of people prefer the term holy days or feast days, but I think most people understand the term holidays, so I'm comfortable using holidays as a word.
Yeah, why not? Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have those throughout the year. We celebrate the equinoxes, the solstices. The other two major Thelemic holidays laid out in the Book of the Law are the first night of the prophet and his bride, or Beast and Bride Day, as well as the 3 days of the writing of the Book of the Law. But yeah, you'll catch us celebrating, solstices, equinoxes, things of that nature. But again, Thelema is like very individualistic, so a lot of us also celebrate things on the Wheel of the Year. In terms of the pagan sphere and the Wiccan sphere, we like to double dip there because who doesn't love a good holiday?
Yes, exactly. Man, there are so many questions that are popping up in my mind right now while
Oh,
you're
good,
talking.
good.
And for anybody watching this, I had kind of a script of generally the questions we wanted to talk, but now I'm just like, I need to know more. Is this like do you have to be initiated to be considered a Thelemite? Or like, do you have to attend mass and be a member of OTO and all that? Or can you just do a self-initiation? Like what does that look like?
Oh, absolutely not. So you don't have to join any group or organization to be a Thelemite. Like I said, the only two things you need to do to consider yourself a Thelemite, and I don't say need as much as we need a definition, right? So that I really like this one is accept the Book of the Law and whatever that means to you. Like I said, how you define divinity can be very personal. It can be internal. It can be external, as well as try to do your will. That's it. I think we're very, very blessed and very lucky that we do have some great Thelemic organizations out there that can help you with learning in sort of a more structured teaching environment. You may have heard about the AA. That's one of them. And other teaching organizations that have popped up include College of Thelema, as well as Temple of the Silver Star. I mean, these are all organizations that can help someone learn. And then if you're more interested in, for example, initiation or fraternity, the OTO, or Ordo Templi Orientis, is a great organization to help you with that. The initiations are obviously don't want to, no spoilers, but if you're familiar with ceremonial magic and sort of these traditions of initiation. So people who are familiar with the Freemasons, for example, would be like, oh, yes, I get that. So the OTO is actually technically considered something called a paramasonic organization. So what the heck does that mean? And most
Right.
people don't know. Yeah,
No.
like, what does that mean? But that basically means the rituals or initiations are, in a way, dramatic plays meant to teach you something about philosophy or magic or yourself. So initiations typically have some sort of challenging element for you to overcome, and there is like an overarching theme or story you're participating in. And the goal there with initiation is really teaching and in the case of Thelemic initiations in the OTO, incredibly powerful, beautiful rituals, really self-affirming in a way perhaps other paths are not. Something I should mention that's like different from OTO compared to the Freemasons we're mostly familiar with. And of course, I'm talking about the Scottish Rite Freemasons. I know there's some exceptions, but the Freemasons most of us are familiar with. They don't allow women. Now, I know there are women chapters or like auxiliary groups that you can join, but and they also don't accept trans people, non-binary people, genderqueer people. Like I said, it's specifically for men, and the women's track of that isn't the same. OTO, from its very conception, what allowed women, allowed LGBT folks, allowed genderqueer people, allowed trans people of all walks of life. So, for example, if you're a woman and you want that initiatory experience and you want that fraternity, Thelema offers that specifically through OTO, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, like I said, And the interesting thing too, I did mention the Gnostic Mass and initiation. Those are actually two separate things within the OTO. And I guess not a lot of people realize that. There's the EGC, which is Ecclesiastica Gnostica Catholica, which is the ecclesiastical arm of the OTO, which does the Gnostic Mass and sort of these public services for the general public, like the Gnostic Mass. And you could just interact with that and go through like a baptism, confirmation, and then train under a bishop to eventually be a priestess or priest or deacon. And then, of course, there's an initiatory track, which is its own thing, where you go through these different degrees as part of this story and this learning process and these rituals. So, yeah.
Interesting. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing this information with us, by the way. I mean,
Absolutely.
I just so appreciate all this knowledge that you're giving me right now. I feel like I would not be able to have it otherwise. So thank you. It's really nice to
absolutely.
get,
It's
like,
a real
look
joy
inside.
to talk about it. Yeah, and I definitely want to share this, and it's interesting because there's a lot of misinformation out there, but I like to be very open and not dogmatic, right? Because like my path as a Thelemite is going to look different from another Thelemite's path, and that's completely valid too. And although I'm more traditional Thelemite in terms of the organizations I'm a part of and stuff like that, the solo path is completely valid. And in terms of doing the work yourself, this often doesn't get talked about enough, but obviously there is the AA, which is not Alcoholics Anonymous, it's the Thelemic teaching organization.
Yes.
There are a bunch of different lineages to join, and I know people have really strong opinions about that, but I always tell people choose the one that most speaks to you. But that being said, Aleister Crowley said it himself that you can do the AA work on your own. So that is completely valid. Like you can go through those steps and follow the curriculum yourself. You don't need to join, just like you don't need to join the OTO. Obviously, if you want that group OTO initiatory experience that has a lot of people involved, you can't recreate that on your own. But certainly with the AA, yeah, you can definitely do all of that yourself.
I can very much appreciate that. As a chaos magician, I don't really care what anybody wants me to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. So I can appreciate that from my perspective of you can be self-initiatory, I guess, in a sense, or do whatever you want. So I love that. So if somebody is like interested in maybe going into Thelema and they are a beginner, is there any advice that you would give them that you think would be really helpful?
Yeah. Well, first of all, how cool. For beginners, I would say don't be discouraged. No one was born knowing the vast amount of difficult material there is out there to study. So you deserve, I would tell them, you deserve to be here as much as anyone else studying the material and learning. You don't have to be a big brain super genius, egghead to study Thelema. You can be a normal person with a life, with a family, with other priorities, and still get something out of this amazing system of mysticism and the religion. And I think we see this too much, where there is this current of elitism, and people can be very discouraging. And no one was born knowing this. The material is very hard, and it doesn't help people to have that elitism and meanness, because it's hard enough, people being mean to you. So I would say stick with it, be patient with yourself and learning it. And don't give up, even if someone's mean to you online, you deserve to be here.
There's always trolls. Okay. There's always the trolls. It doesn't matter what you say or who you are. No, I think that's great advice. Definitely. Is there any sort of, let's say, literature that you would recommend for a beginner? Like what books could they start out with?
Yeah, so there's a number of them that I would recommend. Let me just pull up my list so I get the perfect titles right for everyone.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to sound a little strange to people, but Aleister Crowley is obviously very central to Thelema and its foundation. He really laid it out. So, but that being said, Crowley was a Victorian man and a highly educated Victorian man. So the way he speaks can be hard to understand. And again, don't be discouraged. It's not you, it's the material. So what I'm going to recommend to get, sort of a foundation of what the heck is going on here, I'm going to recommend a very accessible book of Thelema, and that's Living Thelema by David Shoemaker. Additionally, in my opinion, the most accessible books by Crowley himself talking about magic, it's going to be Magick in Theory and Practice by Aleister Crowley. That one's available online through sacredtext.com, completely free. Again, Magick in Theory and Practice. I'm also going to recommend Magic Without Tears by Aleister Crowley, and something called The Law is for All by Aleister Crowley. The Law is for All is Crowley's commentary on the Book of the Law. So the Book of the Law, again, is a dictated text. It's really, even though it's central and sacred to Thelema, it's really hard to just pick up and read. Like, it's pretty inaccessible. But Crowley went back and made commentary that's like, wow, this actually makes sense. It's not just a bunch of gibberish. So The Law is for All is awesome. I'm going to recommend The Weiser, Concise Guide to Aleister Crowley by Richard Kaczynski. What I like about this Crowley biography, it's a bit thick, but it's really, it's not trying to sell you on an agenda. It just lays out the facts for you so you can make up your own mind about Aleister Crowley, how you feel about him as a person, as the prophet of Thelema. It's a really well-researched Crowley biography. As well as Perdurabo by Richard Kaczynski. The Weiser Concise Guide is like a slimmer version of Perdurabo, which is the big autobiography. And then I'm also going to recommend The Magick of Aleister Crowley by Milo Duquette. I think a lot of people are familiar with Lon. He's just such a great guy who talks about, Qabalah, but really solid material from him as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's an awesome book recommendation list. I've heard of all of those books except for maybe one of them. Haven't read a single one, but I think that it's actually time for me to read up on it. Even if I don't practice Thelema, I want to understand a little bit more of the basics, So thank you for those recommendations. I appreciate that. So thank you again so much for just coming on, letting me interview you. Also, when you were talking, I realized that you were saying Aleister Crowley, and I think that this entire time I was pronouncing it Aleister Crowley. Just don't hate on me in the comments, people. My pronunciation is awful.
So one way to that helps with that is Crowley rhymes with holy, which seems a little bit egotistical, but that always helps me. I'm like, Crowley holy, Crowley holy.
Yes, that is very egotistical, but I like it. That's funny. Okay, Aleister Crowley. I can't believe I was pronouncing it wrong, like the whole video, but whatever. You live and learn.
I see other Thelemites pronounce it Crowley as well, and I think that has to do with Supernatural for Supernatural fans, because they had a character that was Aleister Crowley on that show, and it just. Yeah, I get it.
Yes, definitely. Oh, well, it is what it is. But again, thank you so much. If anybody wants to get in contact with Maevius Lynn, I'm going to leave all of her information down below, her Instagram, her Twitch, her, what are we doing? Your YouTube channel. We're going to do all the things. All the links are going to be in the description box for you guys to check out and to go follow her. And thank you again. Thank you for watching this video. For anybody that's here and wants to add to the conversation, definitely feel free to add comments and we will respond as we can. And I hope you all have a blessed day. Thank you so much. Bye.